Last time Jamie Edwards joined me on Journey with Jake, we explored her adventures in Antarctica. In this episode, we're venturing to the Arctic, complete with polar bears on the horizon and the chill of a polar plunge. Welcome to Journey with Jake. This is a podcast about adventure and how through our adventures we can overcome the challenges of life that come our way. While I expect you will learn some things about different adventures, this show will entertain you. Each episode will feature a different guest or guests as they share experiences and stories from the different adventures they have been on. Not only will you be entertained, but you will also hear the failures and trials each guest faces and what they have done or are doing to overcome the hardships that come their way. My goal is to take each of us on a journey through the experiences of my guests with the hope that you'll be entertained and inspired to overcome your day-to-day challenges. After all, it's not all about the destination as it is about the journey. Welcome back to Journey with Jake. Before we dive in, just a quick reminder to make sure you're following me on Instagram at Journey with Jake Podcast, where I share the personal side of my adventures. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. And of course, a shout out to the Podmatch Podcast Network for connecting me with so many incredible guests. Now, today happens to be Columbus Day. On holidays, I usually like to release a bonus episode. And while it's tempting to call this one a bonus episode, since Jamie Edwards is back with us, I'm not going to do that. This is episode 183, and it's way too packed with stories and experiences from Jamie's journey to the Arctic to be considered just a bonus. If you remember, Jamie joined me back in episode 84, where we talked quite a bit about her time in Antarctica. This time around, she shares what it was like exploring the Arctic, an adventure she took alongside her stepfather and daughter. 3 generations experiencing the far north together, which makes this story even more special. If you enjoyed this conversation, definitely go back and check out episode 84 for more of Jamie's incredible adventures. All right, let's get to my conversation with Jamie Edwards. Well, I am thrilled today because I have a former guest of the show, Jamie Edwards. She's back on. Jamie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thrilled to be back. I'm so glad you had me back.
Absolutely. You did a lot for me. I got connected to you through Sasha Leznev, and then you connected me to Colleen Avis, who then had me write in her book. And I mean, it's crazy where it's gone. And so I'm so thankful for that. I'm thankful for you for connecting me with Colleen. And that's what I love about this. I feel like the connections that I get from doing this podcast have been just amazing. It's been awesome.
Exactly. And it's kind of shows how small a network it really is, connecting all these dots between all your different guests and Colleen with her sacred spaces and then all the travel. So it's all good connections.
Definitely all good connections. I was looking it up. I was looking up your episode. You were episode 84 for me when we spoke the first time. And it was released back in December of 23. So it's been pushing it. I mean, it's going on, it'll be 2 years this December. So
I can't
it's like,
believe it's
wow,
been that
I
long.
know. It's crazy. It's gone by super fast. And I was thinking about that. I was like, okay, a lot's happened. I know at the time your daughter was taking a gap year, was about to take a gap year. I think your son was a junior in high school. So catch us up. Where is everybody? What's going on in the world of Jamie Edwards?
Well, my daughter is at the University of Washington. She's a junior now, and my son just finished a gap year of his own, and he is now at college. And so my husband and I are officially without kids at home, which is bittersweet, of course, but the secret is it's more fun than you'd imagine.
All right, you got the secret. More fun
It
than you
is.
can.
It's,
I
I mean,
love
it's
it.
sad on the one hand, but on the other, it feels good to know that they're both happy, at least for the moment, and to be able to do some things for ourselves. And so far, it's been nice. It hasn't been very long, but so far, it's been nice.
And I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit more about your daughter because I know she went on this Arctic trip with you. So we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Before we dive into all that, though, I also want to talk about IamLostandFound.com. You still got that going. And I saw another little thing on there. I saw a little tab that said coaching, travel coaching. So yeah, what have you got going on with I Am Lost and Found?
All right. So I am lost and found. I think I've written my 109th post. So that's been really rewarding. But what has happened with it, which has really been a nice side bonus, is that I Am Lost and Found has essentially become a writing portfolio. So it's enabled me to write for other publications and outlets, which has been really fantastic. I write for a travel advisor that I work with called Sire Travel, and I also write for Eagle Creek Luggage. And I did just complete an assignment for National Geographic, which I couldn't be happier about. Sort of a dream to be able to write for National Geographic. It's a coffee table book releasing in November of this year called The Traveler's Atlas, and I wrote 4 entries for it. So I wrote about Japan, Uganda, Bhutan, and the Balkans. So that'll be the Christmas gift of the year for me. Everybody I know is going to get that book when it
Yeah, hey,
releases in
put me on that.
November.
I want to get that book too. That'll be awesome. I love those, those coffee table type books too. Those are a lot of fun. Kind of scroll through them and jump to different
Yeah.
spots, and that'll
So
be
that's
fun.
been exciting. And then
Yeah.
the travel coaching that you mentioned is something that really just evolved from years and years of loving to discuss travel, give advice, give recommendations. And I realize that there's a lot of people out there who don't really know where to start when it comes to planning a trip. They maybe have a general idea that they want to take a road trip through Europe, or they'd like to go to South America or the Caribbean, but they either don't have the time or even the inclination to start doing the heavy researching. So I decided to package my research as something that people would come to me with. And it's been really fun. It's in my sweet spot. I don't personally want to book any travel. I don't want to get on the phone with airlines, be responsible for anybody's budget necessarily, like booking hotels, but I do work with people to give them ideas and research. And most of my research comes with all the information and links that they need to go ahead and book it themselves. So that's been really fun for me. I've done it, I have about 10 or 12 clients so far. They've all been very different, and I've enjoyed it immensely.
What is it about that you enjoy? Is it the research part? What is it that you, or just the different personalities and seeing what they like?
It's definitely the research. I speak to people on the phone first and get all the information about what their trip goals are, how they like to travel, a general sense of budget. And based on all these wants and likes and dislikes, I piece together all the things as if it were me going and how I would research it if it were my trip. And I think that what makes it different is anyone can Google adventure hotels in Alaska and be given tons of information. But what I do is I go really deeper into a lot of different sources, and my Google searches and my keywords are different than what you might put in, Jake. So I really refine, fine tune, and cross reference a lot of sources, many of which are sources I have found just throughout my years and years of travel. So I feel like I'm able to give people ideas that they may never have come up with or found on their own.
Well, I like that. And I know just from reading some of your blogs or articles on I Am Lost and Found, you do have a wealth of experience. You have your own experiences that you've done. So I know you're just putting that all into play. I think that's perfect. And there's people out there who the idea of having to research and do that kind of thing is just bogs them down and stresses them out. That's where you come into play because you love it. So it fits.
I love it.
Sounds like
And
a
it's
good fit.
overwhelming. I understand it is overwhelming to put a big trip together, find the restaurants, find the hotels. So that's why it has been such a great kind of niche for me to do, because it's only the things I like to do. And then many people don't mind booking their own trips, or they're happy to do that part. They just really need a lot more direction. So that so I'm really continuing to do that. So my world has expanded a bit beyond I Am Lost and Found, but I still have lots of downtime, kind of fit it in when I want to. And now that my kids are not at home, I'll have even more time to devote to it.
Wild. Time just keeps moving. Just keeps on moving. Well, I'm excited to talk to you today because we're going to talk about your trip to the Arctic. And when we talked before, a year and a half ago plus, we talked about Uganda a little bit. We talked about a few things like that. The big one we talked about was Antarctica. So
Hmm.
you've hit both poles now. You've hit North Pole, South Pole. When you look at the two kind of side by side, you've been to both. What's the glaring difference between the two?
That's a great question, Jake. And it's one that while I was on the expedition in the Arctic, I asked not only myself, but a lot of the passengers on the ship, and we went by ship. I'd say at least half the passengers had already been to Antarctica on the very same ship. And there are some stark differences beyond the fact that they're located at two different ends of the Earth. One of the biggest differences is the polar bears. The polar bears are the biggest draw of the Arctic, because there are no polar bears in Antarctica and there are no penguins in the Arctic. So those two creatures live at polar opposite parts of the world. I would say that the thrill and the inherent sort of danger, for lack of a better word, in the Arctic is the polar bear, and that has a lot of people going there. The Arctic is also much more accessible to get to, just much easier to get to. Not that it's easy, but it's just closer, especially if you're coming from Europe. We flew from DC to London to Helsinki, and then from Helsinki, we flew on a charter about 4 hours north to the islands of Svalbard, which are about halfway between the coast of Norway and the North Pole. And this group of islands is where we started our trip. And we circumnavigated the islands of Svalbard, and along the way saw walruses, polar bears, bird colonies, whales. So that the wildlife component is the same. You get wildlife on both poles, but different wildlife, of course. I think that Antarctica is so remote and so much harder to get to. And for me, at least, it was the equivalent of going to the moon. It just felt so far away. And it really is. The danger and thrill for an Antarctic expedition is the Drake Passage, which is this 800-mile body of water that's notoriously can be either really hairy and have strong winds and terrible storms, or it could be really simple crossing. It's a 2-day crossing. So that's sort of those are some big differences between the two. And just getting to the continent of Antarctica takes a lot more time to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. When you think of the Arctic, and part of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, I just go straight north. I'm in Utah, I just go straight north. And some people have done that. I've seen some pictures of people, dipping their feet in the Arctic, Canada, that area. Oh, you went, how do you say it again? Svalbard?
Yes, these are hard words
Svalbard.
to say. Believe
Yeah.
me,
Is it,
I trip over.
so like, is that Norwegian owned? Is that part of,
Yes,
or is it its own thing? It's part of Norway?
it's
Okay.
part of Norway. It's been part of Norway, I believe, since 1920. It's Norwegian territory. And when you go north of Svalbard, which is this group of, I mean, there's 100 or more islands, but there's 4 main islands. And that part of the world, you get 4 months of daylight, 4 months of darkness, and 4 months where you're sort of straddling the two. Our expedition took place in June. So we had 24 hours of daylight every day
Wow.
for the 10 days on the ship and the days on either side, which is unique. It really is. It takes some getting used to. But what's wonderful about the midnight sun is that there's just never not a time that you can be looking, experiencing, observing, out on deck all day and all night long, seeing the landscape, the glaciers, the ice, the icebergs. And similarly in Antarctica, you go to Antarctica during the midnight sun there, which is January, February. So both poles I went during the midnight sun, which is very exciting and cool.
It's amazing. How do you sleep at night? Hopefully they have some blackout curtains or something on the ship, because that'd be
Yes, they
tough.
do have blackout curtains, and I recommend anybody bring a really good eye mask so you can sleep at night. But the blackout curtains help. And in the beginning, when I first went to the Arctic, I made the mistake in the middle of the night of just sort of peering outside to see what was going on. And you get tricked into thinking it's daylight and it's 2 in the morning. And it's very hard to go back to sleep after that. I learned the hard way not to do
Yeah,
that.
your body's like, hey, let's go, let's get going, it's time.
It's true.
Wow.
And there's a part of me that feels like I'm missing out, that there's something out there in the water or in the sky that I should be looking at because I'm such a wildlife junkie by nature. I just always wanted to be out on the decks. So we did spend a lot of time out on the decks. One of the unique things about the Arctic is because the polar bears are a present danger, that every single time we got near land to have a excursion where we disembarked or got out on the Zodiac boats, which are these big inflatable boats that you roam around the Arctic Ocean in, the expedition team have these really highly powerful scopes, and they are constantly scoping the entire shoreline for polar bears. And when I first arrived, I thought, oh, they're just being so overly cautious. I mean, the polar bear is like 3 or 4 miles away. We were at on sort of a slip of land watching walruses, a huddle of walrus. And we were told that we had to get right back into the Zodiacs because a polar bear had been sighted. So I'm looking all around, like, where's the polar bear? Where is it? I don't see it. We get back on the boat. It's like 2 miles away. But apparently they can smell up to 20 miles, which is really hard to believe. Their sense of smell is so keen and they're super fast. So they were being cautious, but not overly cautious because they really are such ferocious animals and they could smell the walrus from where he could smell it from where he was. And then on top of that, what I didn't know about polar bears is that they could swim for days without stopping, miles.
Yeah.
And that gave a whole new perspective on the sea kayaking program, where every day I'm thinking, this doesn't feel like the safest place to be when there could be a polar bear swimming. But I really felt confident that the Quark team knew exactly what they were doing.
Quark, is that the name of the group that runs the boat? What's the
Oh, yes. Quark Expeditions. So that was
Gotcha.
the boat is called the Ultramarine. They have a fleet of boats that go to both, actually, they go to the Canadian Arctic, they go to Greenland, Antarctica, and that's who we chose. That it's almost like finding the right hotel for you. Like some people want to go to a Four Seasons, some want to go to, a different brand. They all have their styles. And what I liked about the Quark expeditions is that they were very modern, but not fancy, kind of
Mhm.
simple, to the point, very functional, I mean, all the food was good and the expedition team were so knowledgeable, but it just felt like the right fit. So that's why when it came time to book the Arctic Circle, we chose Quark again.
And I know you're hesitant to say, it's not a cruise ship, right? It's expedition, isn't that what we're supposed to call it? Because I mean, there's definitely things about it that's cruise like. I mean, you get good food, you have those kind of things. You have your own cabin, you have things like that. But you're on a smaller boat and you're doing things that are not like a big old cruise ship. And I think these boats, correct me if I'm wrong here, but they're kind of made for like going into this kind of environment.
Yes, you're exactly right. So I joke that don't call it a cruise, although I mean, technically, it is a cruise. You're cruising through the water. I like expedition because I feel like you said, these boats are purpose built. So they were not once a princess ship that's been repurposed into taking passengers to the Arctic or Antarctica. They're built with all the technology needed to get through certain ice. May be wrong, but I think the Ultramarine is a class 2 icebreaker. So that when we were really far north, and we were going through pack ice. I mean, believe me, we weren't like Shackleton or anything going through the water, but there was quite a bit of ice. There's also a lot of aspects of the ship that lended themselves to polar travel. The fact that the Zodiac boats that we get into for our excursions are already at almost at sea level so that can get in them really quickly, get right out on the water. The company takes a lot of pains to make conservation sustainability a huge part of their program. So when we go out onto the continent or into the islands of the Arctic, if we step on any land and we come back, our boots have to go through specific washers so that we don't bring anything from land onto the ship and transport it somewhere. So there's a lot of precautions in place and safety measures because although uh, it's not necessarily in the summer likely that you're going to hit a huge storm, although it can happen. But I mean, you have to be careful because, as I say, in the Arctic, anything can happen on any day.
Amazing. I'm getting kind of excited to go on a trip like this. This just sounds amazing. How many people on this boat? I guess.
So there are 150 passengers,
Okay.
and I believe that there's almost 200 crew between crew and expedition.
Wow. Okay.
So I don't know exactly how big the boat is, but it's small enough that you could walk around all the decks in about 5 minutes, take a loop. And it's just a very beautiful, elegant ship, but like I said, not fancy. You could go to dinner in your Columbia, Patagonia, and no one's going to blink an eye. Unlike some other ships that cater towards people who really want to get dolled up for dinner and,
Yeah.
not that we didn't drink champagne and have drinks, we certainly did, but it was not a dressy, fancy cruise. And another part that I think people might assume that there's a lot of downtime on these trips. And when you wake up in the morning after you have breakfast, you're right out on your first Zodiac trip or your first excursion. That lasts 2 to 3 hours. You come back ravenous, you have lunch. Maybe you have a half hour to relax before you're back out on the water for your second excursion, 2 to 3 hours there. I kind of equate it to a polar safari. For anyone who's ever been on a safari in Africa, you take your two huge game drives, and in between, you're eating after you eat, and then you're dead to the world. You're so tired. So it, I think it's a good analogy, even though analogies are definitely not my strong point, because I really feel like a lot of you don't have a lot of free time. You're not playing shuffleboard or bingo. Although there are some really great talks and presentations that the expedition team gives when we have a recap after, sometimes before dinner, sometimes after. And they have experts who come and they talk about photography, or they talk about glaciers, or they talk about polar bears, and ornithologists talk about the birds. It sounds like it would be dry and boring. However they hire these crews, they are almost like they're stand-up comics in a previous life. They just bring so much energy and passion and charisma to their talks that they have everybody completely wrapped.
I love it. So I've got a question for you because I know just kind of your personality, who you are. Cold weather, it doesn't seem to be like your thing, but yet Antarctica, Arctic, what about that? Like what's going on with that?
I don't know. It's a question I ask myself all the time. I wish I had a really good answer. I think that this is just that old adage, if you're dressed properly, you don't feel the cold. I will also add that climate change has made these cold places not so cold. And if I think about Washington, D.C. this past winter, it was far colder than it was in the Arctic for me this past summer. But generally, I'm not a person who loves being cold, but there's something about the adventure of these trips that completely outweighs my fear of cold and cold weather and cold water. For that matter, there's a tradition on a lot of these ships to do the polar plunge, which is where you knowingly hurl yourself off the boat into the frozen Arctic Sea. For what reason? I mean, it's, I guess, just bragging rights, I say, in the shot of vodka that they give you
Yeah,
after.
warm me up.
I think what was fun about that, and cold water is actually one of, I mean, I don't even go swimming in the ocean. I don't go in a lake. It's just too cold for me. But I think I would have regretted it had I not done it. So it's
Got to
just for
say you
fun.
did it, right? Yeah, you got to say you did it, and I know you did it in Antarctica as well. So I love that. It's
I
hitting them
did, and I
both up.
think that it almost made it worse knowing what I knew about Antarctica made it harder to jump. But my daughter, I was on this trip with my 21-year-old daughter and my 82-year-old stepfather. He did not jump. She jumped. She
Of course.
dived. She went head first in, and as a 21-year-old would. And I just think that the experience of us all being there together made the Arctic even more special because we were three generations experiencing this remote, really fascinating part of the planet.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit because I know Antarctica, you went with your stepfather as well. to
Yes.
Antarctica. And how many years ago was that? 4, 3?
It was
Okay.
2022.
Okay. So
Yeah.
he was
Wait, no,
79.
3 years ago.
Okay. So he
Yeah,
was 79 years old. He's 82 now. And then your daughter as well. You didn't have your daughter in Antarctica. Yeah.
that's
What was
right.
that like having all three of you there? What was the dynamic like? What was some of the fun experiences you had together?
Well, what was really great for me is that when I went to Antarctica with Rick, my stepfather, and the expedition team there was just, as I was mentioning, so knowledgeable, so having the time of their lives. These people, range of ages, but I would say the average age of would have been in their 30s, and wanting my daughter to see that there's no one path to take after college. There is a whole world out there of unique and interesting and fascinating jobs like this, like working on an expedition ship. My daughter's really into nature and environmental studies and all that. And who knew that these things existed and that they were as much fun as they are? So that was really important for me to have her witness that beyond all the things that you expect from an Arctic expedition, like the wildlife and the receding ice and climate change, and being really aware of all of that. So I think mission accomplished on that. The guides on the ship, the uh, expedition team, really make a point of mingling with all the passengers. They are they sit with us at dinner, they sit with us at the bar. They it's like, not to sound like really corny, but very familial. Very, there's just something about it. It's very warm. It takes a certain type of person to really be able to connect with people the way they do. And most of these ships, Ella, my daughter, was probably one of the youngest. I'd say the average age on the ship was probably 50s, and Rick was
Okay.
probably one of the oldest. So I was sort of in the sweet spot there. But she really connected with a lot of the guides, and I think it was really incredibly eye-opening for her. And as far as my stepfather goes, he had such an amazing time in Antarctica. We both did. And my mother is not adventurous in the same sort of way. So Rick would never really have had the opportunity to do these trips without us. So I think he was very, he was like a kid. I mean, it's just so beautiful there, and he couldn't stop saying how beautiful it is. You feel very lucky to be able to be sitting in a kayak in the middle of all this brash ice, watching a bearded seal just hanging out on a iceberg, and just hearing the sounds of the ice clashing and hearing the cacophony of the birds overhead. It's just otherworldly, and we all appreciated it.
I love that. So your daughter's there with you. You as a mom who's seeing your daughter now, who's was she 21? I think you said she's 21 years old, about ready to embark on her own life's adventures, and she's already doing some of that already. Yeah, what does that do for you as a mom seeing your daughter grown up?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm of course every parent would say how thrilled and excited they are for their kid, watching them grow and change and evolve. I wouldn't say I'm surprised, because my husband and I moved to Tokyo when the kids were really little. And we traveled extensively with them throughout Asia when we lived there. So they really were always used to a lot of travel, and they were really portable. I mean, for the most part, they were portable. We had some really terrible flights with them, but generally we had good experiences. And I think it's sort of just in their DNA now to get out and experience and be adventurous. So I feel that my husband and I have instilled some of that in both of them. So I would say, to answer your question, I feel just really proud. And Ella has been doing some travel writing. She is, like I said, studying environmental science. So for her, a lot of what she saw and heard in the Arctic were things that she had already been studying and learning, and was able to see it in real time.
Beautiful. Let's talk about the wildlife a little bit because that sounds like a huge part of the Arctic. Polar bears, that's the big draw, obviously. And even though they're far away, can you see them from the boat? Like, where do you watch the polar bears?
So you could see them from the boat. So the experience I told you about, where we were watching the walruses, and we'd only been watching them for a short time before we had to head back to the boat. And we got back to the boat, and you could see them through the scopes or you could see them through your zoom lens because there are strict policies in place to first and foremost protect the bears, that you have to be 300 meters away from a bear that you spot. 300 meters, like almost 900 feet. That's really pretty far. And as I'm writing this article about this trip for my website, I curse myself for not having a strong enough zoom lens. I thought I had a great zoom, and then you get there and my zoom was just not strong enough. But a few passengers had these great zoom lenses and they got really beautifully detailed pictures. And I got really blurry, fuzzy polar bear pictures. But it did force me to take the lens away, at least from a clicking point of view, and just focus on watching the bear. It's such a beautiful, I mean, we saw two of them and they were both solitary. And it's just a majestic animal and playful, weirdly playful. So at one point we watched the polar bear along the ridge and then he flung himself down a snowy hill, rolling like a toddler all the way down the hill, and then got up and kept walking. And then he did it again. Being able to witness that and watch him get into the water. And then we tracked him swimming for miles across a channel and then got out on the other side and walked away. And just sort of this poignant, solitary life. And also, maybe a touch of sadness knowing that from everything we're hearing that the polar bears are going to have to adapt in different ways because they don't have the ice that they used to have to travel and how it's affecting the polar bears. So it's poignant, I would say.
Yeah, speaking of that, we'll kind of go back to wildlife here in a minute, but kind of on that subject, you're there seeing these things firsthand, things that may, who knows how many years down the road may not be around as much. So I think it's fortunate you had your stepfather there. I think it's fortunate that your daughter got to see it too, because who knows in her lifetime what's going to happen with all this. Did you have a lot of time to reflect on that as well?
We did. And in fact, it really brought it full circle at the end because when we disembarked from the ship, we had about 8 hours in Longyearbyen, is the name of the town in Svalbard, a port. We had 8 hours there until our flight, and they had a museum, the Polar Museum, the Svalbard Museum, and there they had documentation photographs of, among other things, of the receding glaciers. So they would have what the glaciers looked like 100 years ago next to what they have now, and then superimposed. And it really, after having seen them firsthand, a lot of these glaciers, and watching them calve, which I think used to be less of a phenomenon, but now you hear calving glaciers and you see the ice breaking off the glacier all the time. But when I saw the photographs, it does really drive home how fast it's all changing. And I think that being on an expedition like this, at least for me, I can say it really made me think twice about things that I might do at home to be a little bit more thoughtful about the planet than ever. And I know, especially for Ella's generation too, that they're even more on it. And hopefully we'll continue to be more on it. But it did really drive it home to go to the museum and to see all that at the end, more so than I think it would have had doing it the opposite way. I think that seeing it in person and then seeing really the effects of climate change were hard hitting.
Yeah, that's just something that, I didn't think about that. It's like, I mean, people got to take their chance now to go see these things because who knows? I mean, it's tough to know. And like you said, we're talking about the polar bears. They've got to adapt in different ways. I mean, there's probably only so much adaptation they can do. There's a whole mess of things, and I don't even
Yeah,
know where
it
to
really
begin
is.
on that.
It's a big long chain of events, but being able to witness to go back to the polar bears, to be able to witness the polar bears in in their natural habitat was humbling. I didn't know this, and there's so many things I did not know about polar bears, but as far as their sense of smell, how far they can swim, things like this. But even just we saw a female and a male at different times. The females they've been able to tag and collar, but they can't collar the males because their necks are so wide that if they were to collar them, it would slide right off. The females have like more of an indent in their neck, like a
Interesting.
human would. So when they when they tag them, they can't come off. So that was pretty interesting. We didn't get to see any with their cubs, which is, I'm grateful I saw the two I did, but I heard someone once say, may have read that going to places like the Arctic and Antarctic are addictive. And I get it. I want to go back to both. I mean, the chances are very slim, but I would love to go back. I think once isn't enough. I really would love to see more.
That's a good point. I wanted to ask about that because I know like Antarctica, like you said, it's so far out there. You got the Drake Passage and it just takes a long time to get there. Whereas, it's a lot easier to get to the Arctic. I wondered about that if you were gonna any chance you might go back.
I mean, maybe Ella will take me one day. That would be nice.
She can go with her daughter and take you. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options, a lot. So yes, and I understand that it's not for everybody. These types of trips are not for everyone. But we have been, as a family, lucky enough to go to a lot of places, and I have loved every beach vacation I've taken with my family. But I think now we are, as a group, into things that are a little bit more high adventure overall.
Yeah, I
A
like
little
that.
more.
Yeah. Well, that's why I like doing this podcast. I talk to people like you, and that gets me all excited. I'm like, Arctic is within range. Maybe I can,
Well, where
Antarctic
you
just seems
live,
so far.
you could go the Canadian Arctic. I mean, that
Yeah,
is.
just go north, right?
I think that you should do that. That's high on my bucket list, as is Alaska. I haven't been to
Yeah,
Alaska, and Greenland, not as close for you, but
yeah,
those are places. Greenland has its fair share of polar bears, that's for sure.
that's amazing. A couple other questions about wildlife because besides polar bears, you saw walruses, seals, tons of birds.
Yes.
There's reindeer too, right? Is a reindeer up in that
Oh
area?
yeah, I always forget the reindeer. Yes. I don't know. Those poor reindeer, because they get overshadowed by the walruses and the polar bears. The reindeer are great. They're like kind of a little loopy. I think they subsist on mushrooms, so they're constantly in a state of loopiness.
Loopiness.
We had been to Finland before and had seen reindeer that are sort of what you imagine more traditional reindeer to look like. But these Arctic reindeer, they're white. They've kind of got big black patches around their eyes. They're sort of stunted looking. They're kind of squat. And as part of the Quark expedition, we had choices to hike or to sea kayak. And on one of our hikes, we hiked a mountain and there were a bunch of grazing reindeer up there. And they really are pretty passive, and we kept our distance, but they make great models for photography, and we could get closer to them than the polar bears. But the reindeer are exciting. And then there's the Arctic fox, which is an elusive creature in the winter. And I'm sure, tons of your viewers who know this already. In the winter, they are fully white. They blend in with all the snow. And when we saw them in the summer, we saw a couple. They were sort of half kind of more gray. They were starting to lose their white coat, become more gray because the landscape gets a little rockier. So then that they can blend into the rocky landscape, because they prey on kind of the weak birds and things like that. So we saw some Arctic fox, which was really a pretty cool thing. And then there are whales, and there was a minke whale, which is kind of glimpsed really fast along the side of the boat one day. I didn't see as many whales as I did when I was in Antarctica, but I did see lots of beautiful birds, and I'm a bird nerd, so that was exciting for me.
Puffins, right? Are puffins in that area?
Puffins are great. Yeah,
Yeah.
puffins are beautiful.
I had a guest on that's his favorite bird is a puffin, and he talked about seeing puffins. And so, yeah,
But
puffins.
it's beautiful. It's a
Yeah,
very cool bird. I just love them. I also geek out on collective nouns for animals, and puffins. When you have a group of puffins is called a circus. Circus
circus
of
of
puffins.
puffins. I like that.
Yes.
I didn't even
Don't
know
get
that.
me started on collective nouns. I could really
Yeah,
go on.
go on and on and on. Well, this adventure sounds awesome. It sounds like you had a great time. Sounds like you enjoyed it. I also heard that you had your fair share of ice cream, if I'm not mistaken.
God, yeah. Well, I mean, going right along with everything cold that I don't like, I happen to not even normally eat ice cream. But the food on the boat, first of all, you're just so hungry from these, because you're out in the Arctic air for hours and hours on end, and it's just, most people know, you just get hungry from that. So the food on the ship was great, but every single meal, except, well, lunch and dinner is always ice cream. So I really ate more ice cream in 10 days than I've probably had in the past 10 years combined. But it was worth it because, I mean, vacation calories, they say don't
Right.
count.
Those don't count at all. That's what I've heard. So I'm sticking with that for sure. All right. I got a few kind of, I guess we'll call them rapid fire, some rapid fire type Arctic questions for you. Besides the polar plunge, other coldest moment on the trip besides the plunge, which was obvious.
The other coldest moment.
Yeah, the coldest moment besides the plunge.
Yeah, I will say, so there was a point about three-quarters of the way into the trip where we left kind of the edge of Svalbard and we traveled north towards the North Pole. And we got as far as 81 degrees north, so not very far from the North Pole. And we were going through all this pack ice, and that was definitely the coldest moment. The air kicked up, it got grayer, a little bit more blustery, and that was a very cold moment. But it was so beautiful to look over the edge of the ship and just see all of the almost like plate glass all breaking up. It was so
Wow.
beautiful. So that was a very cold moment. But even despite how cold it was, I stayed outside because you don't want to miss these small opportunities that you have a window to this other world.
Oh yeah, and it's a for a lot of people. Like I know for me, probably for example, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's like you want to be able to, hey,
Yes,
weather the cold for a little bit to see that and be part of that for
exactly.
sure.
Exactly.
How about the scariest moment of the trip?
Well, let's see. The scariest moment of the trip, I would say there was a ton. All right. So I sea kayaked in a tandem kayak with Rick most of the time. And then one day I decided I was going to, and I'm not really a kayaker by nature. And what's great about the park expeditions is that you can sign up for sea kayaking, but they only have 10 spots. So the three of those 10 spots, which meant that we had this opportunity to see kayak rather than just be in the zodiacs. And I took a single out one day, and the day I took a single just happened to be a very rough day. And I was definitely a little bit nervous about toppling over with the waves a few times. And then, of course, when I realized the polar bears were such good swimmers, it did give me like a little bit of anxiety. But I tried hard to say, God, just imagine the odds if I got taken down by a polar bear in the Arctic. I mean, that would just be, I guess, when your time is up, it's up.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that
no
would have been
doubt.
my scariest moment was being afraid that I was going to topple over.
I know I read an article your daughter wrote about this trip and she mentioned on the kayak a seal kind of playing with her rudder or something over a kayak. That'd make me a little nervous. Like, okay, don't knock me over, you
You
know.
know, this particular seal, I think it was a harbor seal, was so playful. I mean, here we are, and it's popping its head up here, and then we'd look at it and he'd go under the kayak and pop up the other side. I mean, they look like puppies, so really not menacing at all. So you wouldn't have been scared, I promise you.
Okay, I would have loved it. All right, very good. I love that. Funniest moment on the trip.
Oh God. I mean, it's just not going to sound funny unless you were there. But one of the talks was given by the client services person on the expedition team who was in charge of client services. His name was Gordo. He's from Argentina, had this really heavy Argentine accent. And he gave a presentation about living for a year in Longyearbyen, which is that town that has 4 months of darkness, 4 months of light. And just, it was really like a stand-up comedy routine. And everybody had tears rolling down their face because they're just telling wonderful stories. Because when you live in this town, polar bears do wander into the town. You could actually come across a polar bear. So although it's not funny to anybody listening right now, I will say that anyone who had the opportunity to hear Gordo on that trip would agree. I'm actually thinking of seeing if I can find him on YouTube because somebody had to have recorded that. It was great. Other funny moments were just being able to be there with my daughter and Rick, meet people from all over the world who all had something interesting to say, but all this shared love of adventure and travel. So over drinks every night at the bar, there's just all this kind of camaraderie and laughter about these shared experiences. And it just made the whole trip to have all these really interesting and unique personalities around.
The icebergs, or the ice calving, as they say. What does that sound like? Is there a way to describe it?
I mean, it sounds like thunder.
Does it? Okay.
Sounds like thunder. But the unfortunate thing is that by the time you hear it and you look towards it, it's already done.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's unusual. Some people were able to capture it on film, a video, but it was more out of luck that their camera happened to be facing that way first, because when you hear it, it's just already almost done. But it's a very humbling sound, thunderous. But you also realize that a part of the glacier is just receding all the time.
It's wild. Yeah. And is there a particular smell of the Arctic or Svalbard or something like? Is there a particular smell that you remember?
Yeah, well, I mean, anyone who has been around a lot of birds before knows that it's not really the most pleasant smell, guano, which is when I really first experienced it was when we had visited all the penguin colonies in Antarctica. But it's a pretty unpleasant smell. So I think maybe the sleep mask and maybe nose plugs are a good addition to my packing list for next time.
I love it. This has been awesome. This is so fun. What an adventure. You've been to both poles now. You've been to Antarctica, you've been to the Arctic. What's next? What do you have? Where else do you want to go? What's the future look like?
Yeah, God. Well, the next trip we have on the books is Egypt at Christmas time. So I'm very excited for Egypt, which will be very
Awesome.
hot, very opposite of but as far as other adventures I have on my list, Greenland, Alaska, the Faroe Islands, all cold places. Go figure. I can't get away from it.
There
But
you go.
those are all places that I'm keen to get to at some point, but I'm willing to wait. I'm in no rush.
I know, I think maybe it's even you who said that, like maybe in one of your articles or something I read, you talk about how travel's transformative for you, for this trip with your daughter, with your stepfather. How was it transformative for you?
Well, I mean, really, that's a question that has so many levels to it. But for this particular trip, why I find it transformative is because I get to learn in real time things that I read about in the newspaper and then get to apply by seeing it. And what I knew coming back from the trip was so much different from what I knew going into it. And that's why I think every trip is transformative, that you go into it one way, you come out of it another. You take that information and like this, I'm on a podcast, I get to explain it or describe it, inspire someone else to take this trip. And I am moved by it and hope that I move other people to do something like this or not. But for me, I think that I really come through the other side with this different set of knowledge and principles and things to apply moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. So tell everybody if they want to learn more about you, maybe some about your travel coaching, maybe read some of your articles. Where do they do this? How can they find you?
Sure. Well, my website is called IamLostandFound.com, and that's where I write about all of my travels. And I also have a link on there for my travel coaching. So I absolutely love talking about travel. It's really what inspired the coaching. It's what inspired my website. So I'm really happy to talk travel always or answer
Yeah.
questions or
And I
anything.
highly recommend Jamie because even just reading your articles, I feel like I'm there. I love it. I'm like, I'm walking down the street with Jamie here. It just, you do such a great job writing. So she's a fantastic writer. In fact, I know you wrote the foreword for the book that I was part of, Sacred Spaces Volume
Yes,
3.
that's right.
We got talent right here. This is awesome. I got like so much talent on this podcast. Oh,
Thank you, Jake. That's so nice of you.
absolutely. Jamie, this was so fun. I'm starting to like formulate a plan in my mind now to go to the Arctic. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming on Journey with Jake again. I love it.
Thank you, Jake. It's always fun to talk to you.
Big thanks to Jamie Edwards for joining me once again and sharing her Arctic adventure. If you'd like to read more about Jamie's travels or even learn about her travel coaching, be sure to visit her website, IamLostandFound.com. Her blog is full of amazing stories and insights. And as always, I want to thank each of you for tuning in to Journey with Jake. I truly appreciate your support. If you're enjoying the show, I'd love it if you shared it with a friend, posted about it on social media, or simply help spread the word so others can come along for the journey. Next time on the podcast, I'll be talking with Colton Scooster about his adventure competing on American Ninja Warrior. You won't want to miss it. Just remember, it's not always about the destination, as it is about the journey. Take care, everybody.